All right. Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to today's event. Today, we have two very well known journalists from India who are going to talk on the importance of the Hindi belt. The main speaker is Ms. Ghazala Wahab, who is editor of Force, a defense related magazine, and she is a well known editor, journalist, author, columnist, and public intellectual. She's joined by Zia Salam Saab, who is a associate editor of the Hindu. Let me just a little, because there is no other formal speaker for introducing them, so I'll just say briefly that Ghazala Sahaba started her career with Asian Age, I think MJ Akbar's Asian Age, and then she also was correspondent in Delhi for the Delhi Telegraph, and she is now presently the editor of Force, along with Praveen Sohani, whom you have probably seen a lot during these India-Pakistan skirmishes on the YouTube, talking about it. Uh, and so she has written a lot of good books. I have put on the poster Born a Muslim, The Hindi Heartland, The Peacemakers, and there is another dragon on our doorstep. As far as Zia Saab is concerned, he is a very well known literary critic, journalist, and social commentator. He has written a lot of books. He has been associated with the Hindu group since 2000 and presently as an associate editor of the Hindu newspaper. And he is very frequent. You can see his articles in almost all dailies and magazines. He was involved with the Hindu, I mean, he's presently Hindu, the Pioneer, the Statesman, and the Times of India. His books, well known books, are here on the poster: Being Muslim in Hindu India, Shahin Bagh, This of Saffron Flags and Skull Caps, Hindutva, Muslim Identity and the Idea of India, Women in Masjid, Inside the Tablighi Jamaat, and a couple of others. But the latest one is The Lion of Nowshera, on which he is due to talk in a couple of months. So welcome you all, and now I give the floor to Zia Saab. He is going to do a introductory as well as the concluding remarks. So stay tuned, please. Zia Saab.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you might be in whichever part of the world. It's a great delight to be here. And simply because for many years I've been a silent admirer of Ghazala Wahab's craft. Today I get a rare opportunity to air my sentiments. For long years we did not meet. Maybe she was reading me, I do hope so. But I was certainly reading her all these years, whether it was with the Asian Age or later on. But honestly speaking, I knew very little about her until one fine day, her publisher sent me a book, Born a Muslim. Maybe they sent a book to me because I was also writing on many Muslim subjects around the same time. But the book was a trailblazer. It did not just make a dent in the market, it forced people to read, to think, to introspect, and many talk about it even today. The book came, I think, in the market some 5 years ago, and it still remains among the bestsellers wherever, whenever one goes to Amazon or Flipkart, it will be there. And Ghazala is still young and she has many more years to go as a writer, inshallah. But I think this book, Born a Muslim, will be for Ghazala what Pakiza was for Kamal Amrohi or Mughal Azam for K. Asif. She would rather want me to talk of the Hindi heartland, and you too would want me to talk of the Hindi heartland. But Born a Muslim is a book very close to my heart. It talks of the subtle inequalities, the subtle discrimination in the larger society, and also the various anomalies within the Muslim community, which we are probably too shy to talk about. Ghazala was neither shy nor reluctant to paint a picture of the Muslim community, which was consistently engaging, but at times could force you to think. Even maybe you could get provoked too. But I guess that is the job of a writer. You're supposed to paint with your words, but at the same time, leave it a bit open ended for the man to draw his own conclusions. But I won't linger on too much on Born a Muslim, and let's talk of the Hindi heartland and the topic of the day, the importance of the Hindi belt. Well, as we were just discussing, who is to know the importance of the Hindi belt better than the ruling BJP? Most of its MPs come from this part of the country. The BJP is known to sweep elections in Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttarakhand, and until 2024, in 2019 and 14 also, it did remarkably well in Uttar Pradesh too, and swept the elections in Madhya Pradesh, and didn't come wasn't too far behind in Bihar also. So the Hindi belt is what propels the BJP to power at the center. But another person for whom Hindi belt is important is easily Ghazala Wahab. The way she has dissected the history, the polity, the culture of the place tells you that here is an author who keeps her mind open, her eyes open, and writes in a dispassionate way without being removed from the subject, from the object of study. When I started reading her book, The Hindi Heartland, let me tell you, I was very curious to lay my hands on this book. One fine day, Ghazala put it up on Facebook that her book is coming. I immediately went to Amazon to see what is the date on which it will be out in the market. Not that I was going to buy the book, I'll be honest about it, but I knew her publishers would send me a copy of the book. So the moment I got a copy of the book, I started reading it, and it is not an easy read. It's a book which demands consistent attention. It's not a book you pick up with your coffee, flip through 4 or 5 pages, and then put it back and say, okay, I'll come back to it in the evening or maybe the next day. This book is meant for those long summer afternoons when you've got plenty of time, maybe some leisure, and you'd like to enrich your life rather than stepping out and facing the heat outside. What this book packages is very unsettling. Ghazala doesn't use loud words. She doesn't at any place is she go over the top, but in her subtle expression, she says it all. Like when she talks of people and their remarks at the Mehroli monuments in Delhi, or when she talks of caste inequalities in Uttar Pradesh, and how at many places caste is a distinct identity. And when we're talking of caste, it's not just about the Hindus, from which obviously has to be the case, but also about the Muslim community, which is a sad reflection of Indianization of Islam, which incidentally was part of her study for Born a Muslim. So this is one book which talks not just in terms of religion or caste, but as the title says, in terms of the language. The Hindi heartland is where Hindi is spoken, and Hindi in various hues, various dialects. And Ghazala talked about it with great precision. And to my real delight at the Hindu Lit Fest, when she was speaking to Varghese about it, and I'm sure she is going to pack in the next 40 minutes with the same brevity of expression and accuracy of expression. I too am looking forward to that. But my personal thing is when we talk of the Hindi heartland, You cannot divorce Hindi from English these days, and also from its earlier association with Hindavi during the Mughal age. Like right from the time of Akbar, from around 1584 onwards, Hindavi came to be used in documents during the Mughal age. Yes, the court language was Persian, but in the local police stations, in smaller schools and applications, etc., Hindavi was used and accepted. And Hindavi was, in many ways, I would say, a precursor of our modern day Hindi. So that is one important point. And also, Hindi has been very assimilative. There are so many words which we use in Hindi which have a Persian origin, which have an Arabic origin, besides Sanskrit origin and Urdu origin. And all that basically comes in, percolates down to what we speak today in the form of Hindi. But when we are talking of the Hindi heartland, it's, yes, language is important, but equally important is that this is the place which has given rise to the best of cultures in India, maybe the peaks of Indian history. Like when we talk of the Guptas, they were there in modern Awadh in Bihar, the Mauryas too before that. In After that, in medieval India, we have the Delhi Sultans who ruled over this place, then followed by the Mughals and then the British. Probably the only concession to non-Hindi heartland in history by our historians, and maybe in their somewhat lopsided approach, has been the history of the Cholas, followed by Vijayanagara Empire and maybe Tipu Sultan. Hindi heartland has given us more MPs and maybe more resource, much more human resource than we are given credit for. Often, the North Indian states are called Bimaru states. And when we dub any particular region of the country as Bimaru, you are effectively judging only on the basis of GDP or the economics of the region. You are casting a Nelson's eye to the rich culture and history of the region. More about it from Ghazala Wahab. But before she starts off, let me say, Ghazala, hats off to you for what you have done with the Hindi heartland. Because following up a winner with another winner is neither easy nor does it take maybe very little time. I'm sure you have taken a lot of time over Hindi Heartland and you have worked with David. Full marks to you. I hope the book travels as well as you are born a Muslim. Wish you good luck and I look forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you so much, Zia. And thank you, Mr. Aziuddin, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Listening to all these great words coming from Zia, I was wondering if he was talking about me or somebody else, because it's too superlative, and I don't think I deserve this kind of praise that Zia has honored me with. So thank you once again. Uh, I want to basically, I do not want to talk too much about the book per se, as I want to talk about this region. Though my talk is inspired by the book. What I intend to do is, before I come to the main subject, which is the importance of the Hindi belt, I want to make a few clarifications about what exactly is the Hindi belt, or what exactly is the region that we call the Hindi heartland. Whether there is any kind of unity to this region, or if it's an artificial construct. Whether the language is a unifying feature of this region, whether it is the language Hindi which is spoken across this region, whether that unites this region and holds it together as one, or there are some other factors, and why this region is socially regressive and economically weak. So I want to touch upon these issues before I come to the importance of this region. So first of all, when I started work on the book, I also came with the preconceived notion that the idea of a Hindi belt, or idea of a Hindi heartland, is artificial. It's an artificially constructed political entity for political purposes. But when I started research, I realized that actually it is not such an artificial construct as we tend to think about. There are four aspects, four factors which unite this region or which hold this region together. So I am going to talk about them one by one. The first aspect is the geographical unity of this region. Contrary to a popular perception that Haryana is a Hindi-speaking region, so it is part of the Hindi belt or a Hindi heartland, Haryana is not part of Hindi heartland because Hindi heartland is a very specific geographic entity, which is the which is the Indo-Gangetic Plains. Haryana falls in the Indus Valley, so Haryana is outside the Hindi heartland, though it is a Hindi-speaking state, just as Himachal is also outside the Hindi heartland or the Hindi belt. Both Himachal and Haryana, they are part of the Indus Valley, and that is the reason they were part of erstwhile United Punjab. Now, this geographical unity of the Indo-Gangetic Valley, it starts from the desert of Rajasthan in the west and goes up till Rajmahal Hills in Jharkhand in the east. So from east to west, this is the region which is called the Hindi belt. North to south, it is the foothills of Himalayas, which basically means Uttarakhand. And towards the south, it is just the beginning of the Deccan Plateau. So the Dandakaranya forest, which is which kind of divides Madhya Pradesh and Telangana, Andhra, Maharashtra, that area. So this is the region, kind of a sausage-like entity, which is the Hindi belt. So this is the geographical unit, which geographical unity of this region. The reason I call it a geographic unity is because there are no huge geographical features in between this region. So there is desert on one side and there is forest on one side. There are mountains, steep mountains on one side, and again, forest on another, the bottom. But between this, you don't have very difficult geographic features. You don't have deep valleys, you don't have high mountains, you don't have unnavigable rivers, or anything which impedes movement, human movement. So that is the reason that from prehistoric times, whenever, since the time history has been recorded, there has been a very easy movement of people within this belt, from Rajasthan to Jharkhand, because there were no impediments on the way. This easy movement also meant that whenever there was an invader which was coming by the land route from northwest, was comfortably able to traverse this entire region. After the impediments that one faced in Afghanistan and navigating the rivers in Punjab, once that invader, whoever it was, managed to reach the outskirts of Delhi, from there onwards, it was not very difficult for that person to move with large entourage, large armies, which is why you see when the Muslim invasions started in the 13th century, 12th century, actually 12th century is when they started, late 12th century, when they started, they were able to establish their reign or their power or their influence in this region first. And once they consolidated it in this region, then the power radiated from this region to the other parts of India. That time there was no idea of India, but the other parts of this landmass. So this region, this geographical unity of this region is also a factor of its history, as I mentioned. And that is the reason that historically, the earliest known kingdoms in this region, the Mahajanpadas, which goes back to before Christian era, almost of the 11 Mahajanpadas, 8 were situated in this region. Because it was easy, because of the topography, it was easy to establish large land holdings. So that is the geography part of it. The second part, which holds this region together, is the political unity, because the geography facilitated establishment of strong political centers, political base, So this region was united through a strong political center. So whether it was the Delhi Sultanate, or thereafter the Mughals, or subsequently the British, this region has been the center of political power uh, in the modern times, through the medieval into the modern times. So this political unity also ensured that some kind of interaction between people happened, some kind of commonality of culture, commonality of economy, commonality of language, or commonality of religion emerged in this region. So that political power, political center was very important for that, and the geography facilitated creation of political center. Now, once we had a political center in this region, in the Delhi Agra region, through the Delhi Sultanate, that united the economy of this region. The market became one because now there was a central authority which was controlling not only the agriculture, not only the local industry, but also controlling the revenue generation and revenue dispersal. So this led to economic unity of this region because there was a common currency now. There weren't too many satraps, local power centers which were competing with one another. That no longer existed. So that economic unity gave a sense of oneness to the people, because now for economic purposes, economic reasons, they could move from one part of this region to another part. So from Rajasthan, they could move to Bihar. From Uttarakhand, they could move to Madhya Pradesh for purposes of employment. So that was the second aspect. Consequent of this was the third aspect which kind of united this region, and that was the language. Now, this language was not Hindi. This language was not even Persian. Persian was the official language. This entire belt is rich in multiple languages. Each part of this region spoke a different language. So in Uttar Pradesh, where I come from Western Uttar Pradesh. So in Western Uttar Pradesh, the prominent language was Braj, spoken in Agra, Mathura region. Going towards east, towards Awadh, the Awadhi was a language which was spoken there. Further east, there was Bhojpuri, then there was Maithili, there was Magai. Coming down to south, there was Gondi. So there were several languages. In Rajasthan, there was Dingal, there was Rajasthani, there was Gurjari. So all these languages were different from each other, had very distinct grammar, and were vocabulary was the only thing which kind of united them to some extent, because because any language, evolution of any language is also a factor of technology or introduction of a new thing. So if a new technology or a new commodity or anything is introduced in the society, you need a new word to describe that thing. For instance, door. I use this example very often. So when doors were introduced, so a word was needed for that, and a ready-made word was available from Arabic language, which was already prominent in certain parts of Western India, like Gujarat. So Darwaza very seamlessly became part of all the languages being spoken in this region. So similarly, as and when new technology emerged and new techniques emerged, vocabulary was needed for that, to describe that, and that was embraced by all the languages which were spoken in this region. When the central authority came, as in Delhi Sultanate or the Mughals, these differences were flattened to a certain extent because there was a requirement for a lingua franca, a language through which everybody could speak with one another. And that lingua franca was Hindi or Hindavi or Hindustani, whatever one would want to call it, which had vocabulary from all over, which had a slightly, a grammar which paid ode to various traditions, linguistic traditions in this region, but it was a language which was spoken and understood by majority of people in this region. So there was intelligibility amongst people from Rajasthan to Bihar, they could understand one another. So this sort of linguistic unity also held this region together and gave the sense of belt, a Hindi belt. Now, the thing is that I'm just jumping the gun a little bit to talk a little bit more about the language, because we tend to think that Hindi was the mother language, and all the other languages were offshoots of Hindi or were dialects of Hindi. Contrary to that, actually, uh, Hindi was synthesized from all the existing languages. So today, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the three language formula which the government of India has introduced in India through the education policy. This three language formula existed even in the medieval times. The official language was Persian. The language of the streets, the language which people spoke with one another, was this Hindui or Hindustani. And the languages that people spoke at home with their family members were their local languages. So whether it was Awadhi or Braj or Bhojpuri or Maithili, whatever it was. And this is very beautifully captured by Dr. Rahi Masum Rasa in his book, Topi Shukla, where again, this conflict between the language which you speak at home, which progressively became or came to be regarded as a language of illiteracy, because if you're not educated, you speak that language. And if you're educated, you speak Hindi. And if you're even more educated and if you're even more well placed in society or working with the government, then you speak Persian. So this sort of linguistic hierarchy is nothing new. I mean, today, in this hierarchy, English is the top language in India. English is regarded as a language of elite. So this is nothing new. And in those years, Persian had that status, Hindustani had a slightly lower status, and your own mother tongue was much lower in the hierarchy. So that is about the language. The last aspect which holds this region together. So as I was talking of the language, one last point about the language. So language is, apart from Hindi, which is the main language which is now spoken, and most people in this region identify themselves as Hindi speakers, though their mother tongues may be different, and at home they still may be speaking their mother tongues. But language is not the most unifying aspect of this region. To my understanding, the most unifying aspect of this region, even today, is the culture. Because of this political unity, because of economic movement of people, movement of people for economic purposes, the culture was one thing which was distilled and embraced uh, uniformly across this region. And I'm not talking of high culture here, where the patrons are men and women are the performers or suppliers of that culture through music or mujras and all that, or dance forms. I'm talking of culture as we understand in our day-to-day life. I'm talking of culture in terms of seasons, in terms of festivals, in terms of celebration of personal special occasions, in terms of food items, eaten during different seasons. So that is one thing which unites this entire belt. So whether it is association of color with special occasions, so whether it is red, which is regarded as auspicious for marriage and celebration, or white, which is regarded for mourning, a color of mourning, or green, color of fertility, or black, a color of the bad omen. So all of that is common. Or visiting women across religion, whether they're Hindus or they're Muslims, going to Peer Babas or going to Sadhu Babas or Tantrics to get vibhutis or to get some tavis or something to hold their husbands so that the husbands don't go astray, or doing Nazar Utarna of their children. All of this, it is religion agnostic. Everybody does this. All women are, obsessed with this sort of culture. Uh, a pre-wedding culture, pre-wedding traditions, whether it's haldi or it's mehndi or it's vari, or post-wedding celebrations, juta chupai, darwaza rokna, all of this is common across religions in this region. So this is one thing which holds this region together. and what kind of puts this region as one. So this is about the why this region is. I treat this as one. Now, the second part that I mentioned in the beginning is why it is socially regressive and economically backward. Now, social progress or social uplift is a factor of economics. When you are economically secure, then your society also can progress. Your society, your social, your habits, your a lot of culture, your mind opens up, because economic prosperity means that you have access to better education, you have access to more experiences. All of that leads to social upliftment, social emancipation. But when the society is economically impoverished, then obviously it falls back on everything that gives it comfort, everything uh, which gives you a sense that if we hold on to this, we'll be okay, we'll be safe. So I think the social regression of this region is because of economic backwardness. And for both of them, I go back to the First War of Independence or the Rebellion of 1857. Now, after 1857, the British East India Company was dismantled, and India became the British colony. It came directly under the British Raj. The consequence of that was that India was one of their most, uh, you know, money-making colony. So it served their interest to keep it impoverished, to serve the British industry, because 1857 coincided with industrial revolution in Great Britain. So to support their industries, they needed India both as a supplier of raw material as well as a market to absorb goods being produced in UK. Now, for this, it was important that they crush Indian industry, they crush, and they were not interested in Indian agriculture. So the three pillars of the society, which were flourishing during the Mughal reign. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, my earphones were acting up. So the three pillars of the society, as they are now, even then they were the same. The primary sector was the agriculture, which was so rich, and it was flourishing to such an extent that the UP Bihar belt used to be regarded as a granary of the world. It produced so much of food grain that it could feed not just the whole of Indian subcontinent, but the whole of Europe. So that was the output of agriculture in the Hindi belt. Industry, it started with the Delhi Sultanate, but they really grew during the Mughal period, the small scale industry. India, at least UP, Rajasthan, they were the center of small scale industry. Textiles were the main industry here. Weaving was, there were several centers of weaving, and each town of this city, because the empire, a strong empire needs several towns, because townships are the symbol of political power. So each township was then made special, they specialized in a certain industrial item. So an ecosystem for that industry was set up in that township. So for instance, Agra, where I come from, became the center of leather goods, with footwear, tanneries. Uh, Firozabad became the center of glassware. Muradabad became the center of brassware. Banaras became center of weaving, silk weaving. So various parts, Bhadoi, Mirzapur, that belt became center of carpet weaving. So an ecosystem was nurtured in these areas to sustain these industries. And these industries produced items which were part of exports. So the Mughal India was exporting these items, these luxury items, especially the textiles, were being exported from India through the silk routes, multiple silk routes, which were going the land routes. I'm not talking of the maritime trade, which was happening into continental India, but this part, the The road travel, they were part of the road Silk Route, plus they were also part of maritime trade through the coast of Gujarat, which the Mughals had established. So this economic prosperity of this region at that point you can be imagined through the expenditure of these empires, the money that was available to the emperor to spend. You look at the construction that were done, the forts that were built, the palaces that were built, the industries that were set up and profitably so, and the bureaucracy which expanded because of the consequence of this empire. So that was a tertiary sector, the third part of the economic pillar, employment, government employment. So there was bureaucracy not only at the center, but at the periphery also, at the various townships. So there was multi-tiered bureaucracy which was established. So that created the third pillar of the economy. Now, with the coming of the British, the third pillar was taken away because they had their own bureaucrats. They had no time or no space for bureaucrats from India. Only lowest rung of bureaucracy was left open for Indian employees. The first tier and the second tier was filled by the British officers. So this sector shrunk drastically. Industry, I have mentioned earlier, they had no interest in supporting Indian industry because they wanted to promote the British industry. And because they had no interest in Indian food grains, they completely changed the form of agriculture. So from food grains, their focus was on cash crops. And they focused on opium, they focused on indigo, cotton, sugarcane, all the crops which needed a lot of land resources, natural resources, a lot of water. And over a period of time, they rendered the land fallow because season after season, you were just cultivating the same kind of cash crops without taking the break or without, following the cycle of a cash crop after, a cycle of cash crop and food crop. So that was not followed. So the agricultural land stopped yielding the produce which it used to do earlier, which is why then a series of droughts, series of famines started happening in this region with the coming of the British. So this economic backwardness, because now the land was no longer producing what it did, so people moved to cities to look for employment. Cities manpower was reduced to labor. So there was de-skilling of the skilled manpower. There was erosion of agriculture and erosion of industry. So this economic backwardness was after 1857 further aggravated by the British reprisal against people in the Hindi belt, because people in the Hindi belt this is where the rebellion happened. This is where the revolt happened. This was the heart of the revolt. So the British reprisal came against these people. So there were mass killing of the people, hanging by the trees, and all that happened here. But worse than that was, not worse, sorry, wrong word, but equally important was the depopulation of this region. Large number of people who the British deemed as having participated in the rebellion were transferred from the Hindi belt to the British colonies, their plantations in Malaysia, in Mauritius, in other Guyana, and other places. Those who were found directly complicit in violence against the British families, either they were killed or sent to Kalapani in Andaman Nicobar. There was a third category of people who escaped who escaped the Hindi belt because they were worried of getting punished by the British. They were worried of the cruelty being meted out by the British. So they deliberately chose to move out of the Hindi belt to the coastal India, because the center of power at that time was Calcutta. So they looking for employment opportunities and also looking at the opportunity to surreptitiously get on the boats and sail out of India for better opportunities abroad. So a lot of people from this region for several years after 1857 moved from here to the coastline. So that depopulation, de-skilling, erosion of agriculture, suppression of industry, and shrinking of government employment. All of this contributed to economic backwardness of this region, and that economic backwardness eventually led to social regression. The another factor which contributed to social regression was the emergence of very hardline religious groups. So immediately after 1857, the Muslim ulamas, who were the surviving Muslim ulamas of UP, they got together and they thought that saving the religion of Islam was very important. So they collected their resources and established Darul Uloom in Deoband. Now, one of the objectives of the Darul Uloom was, apart from saving Islam and teaching the fledgling Muslims and scared Muslim community, keeping the flock together. Apart from that, they also wanted to create a very distinctive Muslim identity, because they realized that, especially among women, there was very little to distinguish between a Muslim woman and a Hindu woman. So now they wanted to create a very distinctive Muslim identity. And one of their objectives was to persuade men to tell their women not to dress like Hindu women, not to behave like Hindu women. So once this started, so there was a reactionary movement also. I mean, there had to be a reactionary movement. So a similar kind of things started amongst the Hindus. And one of the movements which followed, 2 decades later, was Arya Samaj. Again, a very distinctive Hindu movement which was trying to create a new form of Hinduism, very different from the syncretic sort of Hinduism which existed at that point. And again, because this was almost like a Catholic Hinduism. So one vogue, one prince, one follow, one kind of practice by which you would follow the religion and all that. And because again, it was focused on reforming the Hindus, purifying the Hindus. So this idea of purification came, which created the first friction between the two communities. That, earlier people couldn't convert into Hinduism because of the caste system, because where would they adjust in the Hindu caste hierarchy? But Arya Samaj created this, made it easy. They said, you convert and you become Arya Samaji. So this ghar vapsi, this idea of ghar vapsi, the idea of cow protection, all of this started with that. And British supported. They supported the communal elements among Muslims. They supported communal elements among Hindus, because they realized that it works for them. It helps them if the two communities stay away. In this, one contributing factor was, and I think one of the bigger contributing factor was language, because once British started this Fort William College in Calcutta, the idea was to create some sort of readers, some sort of primers for their personnel who were coming from abroad, from UK, so that they could get familiar with the language spoken here in India, get familiar with the laws of the land and the religions here and all that. So it was basically it was supposed to be their introduction to the land. But while they were doing this, and the 4 people they recruited, one was a Muslim guy and 3 were Hindus, one was from Agra. They were asked to create these readers for teaching of British personnel. So because there was no language like Hindi, and the languages which were spoken here didn't really have a written prose culture, because our literary culture or our literary tradition has been focused on verse, on poetry, for the longest time. Even our religious texts, the Hindu religious texts, were also written in verse. So there was not much of a tradition of prose writing. Sanskrit had traditions of prose writing. So when these readers were being, and Persian had traditions of prose writing. So when these readers were being compiled, uh, those who were familiar with those who were familiar with Persian, they relied more and more on Persian Arabic vocabulary and those literary traditions to write their part of the readers. Those familiar with Sanskrit and Sanskrit texts relied on those literary traditions to write their readers. So uh, some of these readers, those especially those written by Hindus, had preponderance of Sanskrit. Those written by Muslim had preponderance of Urdu, not Urdu, of Arabic, Persian, and then the British realized that within this mother language, mother linguistic tradition of Hindavi or Hindustani, they lived two languages. One was a language of Muslims, one was a language of Hindus. And so they decided that let these be two languages. And Muslim communal elements, Hindu communal elements, they jumped on the bandwagon because now the language was also linked with government employment. Because the British said the language of, knowledge of, until that time, they said knowledge of Urdu, because language was not only about speaking. Now they were writing the language. Now they were printing the books. So that standardization and script was required. So those books which had preponderance of Arabic, Persian, were being printed in Nastaliq, which is Urdu script, and others were printed in Nagri, which was the script from Sanskrit. So this sort of division then came down to religion, which British supported. Muslims said, no, Urdu should be the main language. Hindu said Hindi would be the main language. And this argument went to such extent that they disparaged each other. They disparaged the languages. Muslims ran down Hindi, saying it is a language of illiterates. Hindus ran down Urdu, saying it's a language of nautch girls and avaras and people with no culture. So that is how the social divisions started. So language was a big tool towards social divisions. So on one hand, your religion was pulling you to itself, dividing the society, creating divisions in the society. Language supported, helped in that process. And all of this, economically, you are poor, your insecurities are all at all-time high. So only succor you had in religion and in regressive thinking. So that is one of the reasons that this region progressively became more and more backward socially. And one of the, I think, whenever the society is in distress, the first victims of distress are the women, because the first aspect of the society that you want to control are your women folk, because you regard women as the weakest link in the society. You regard women as a link which is a leaking point, because a woman can go astray, can marry outside their endogamous group, can bring dishonor. So all of that happened. So that all of this started happening in this region, and that led to the social backwardness and economic backwardness. Now, finally, having painted this picture, despite everything, despite this region being economically impoverished, socially backward, despite the fact that people from south of India, they say that the Hindi belt is pulling us down. We produce more. We are more progressive. Our economy is doing much better. Then why is the Hindi belt dominating us politically? So this is where I want to talk about the importance of the Hindi belt. Now, today, what is happening in India is a very new kind of social experiment is going on. A new type of terms of engagement between the communities are being set up, between Hindus and Muslims are being set up. And the petri dish for this experiment, the place where this experiment is happening, is the Hindi belt. So there are 4 ways through which this experiment is being played out in this region. The first is by changing the popular perception that people have. By constantly drilling in the people of the Hindi belt that Hindus, Muslims, Christians, they are all separate communities. And this separation is, this divide between these communities is unsurmountable. So these are permanent fissures between these communities. And to impress and to convey, to convince the people why these are the permanent divisions amongst the communities, they are using history as a tool. So history is being rewritten, history is being reinterpreted, history is being refashioned to suit this narrative. So people like us, people like me at least, I talk about Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, I talk about syncretism. And when I talk about this, so the other side would mock me and say, there is no such thing as syncretic culture. Look at 700 years of Muslim rule. Millions and millions of Hindus were killed in this period, and thousands of temples were desecrated and destroyed in this period. So what syncretism are you talking about? Now, the thing is that a historian told me this, and I think it's a very apt example. History is like a pond of fish. So it depends on you which fish you want to catch and how you cook it. So whatever your narrative is, you'll always find some evidence to support that narrative. So if your narrative is that 700 rule, complete oppression of Hindus, complete subjugation of their traditions, their religion, you will find some example to support that narrative. But if your narrative is what my narrative is, that no 700 years of Muslim rule, but a very syncretic culture evolved in this period, a very comfortable way of coexistence evolved in this period, I'll find thousands of examples to support my narrative. And if a narrative leads to something good, if it's leading to something positive, it's leading to greater understanding and unity in the society, I think that narrative is more important. And that is a narrative we should believe in. But having said that, the truth is, there was no census done in India until the British came. The first census happened in 1870. So until 1870, there was no way of knowing how many people lived in India, how many died, how many were born. So there is no way anybody can say that these many Hindus were killed during 700 years of Muslim rule. There is no evidence for that. The other thing is that because Muslim rulers were a minority and the Hindus were a majority, their bureaucracy was largely Hindu, their military commanders were Hindu. All of this were Hindu. The people, the industry, the farmers, everybody were Hindus. They couldn't have survived all this long by complete suppression of these people, because these people were sustaining not only the economy, the society, but they were sustaining the empires. So it was impossible for them to govern this large landmass by being constantly in conflict with the majority of people. And even when the first census in 1870 happened, Hindus were an overwhelming majority. So if these mass massacres had taken place, there wouldn't have been a majority. India would have been a Muslim country, which it never was. Is my time running out? I don't know. I got on. Okay. So this narrative is not correct. But they are using this narrative to create a public perception of constant strife. So that is the one level. The second level is at the level of policy making. Since independence, whatever the Constitution of India says or has enunciated, various judgments by courts, whether state high courts or even the Supreme Court, has deferred to the Hindu sentiment. So whether it is on the matters of religious conversion, whether it is a matter of cow slaughter, or more recently, the bogey of love jihad, or more recently laws like anti-terrorism law and all of that, they have tried to marginalize the Muslim community through the law. Now, the state of Uttarakhand has passed a uniform civil code. Now, it's the first and the only state in India which has passed a uniform civil code law. Now, this law, it restricts interreligious, intercommunity marriages, and if the man is Muslim, and if there is any conversion which happens as a course of marriage, no matter it's emotional decision or whatever decision, if the conversion is detected, the marriage would be declared null and void. The man would be imprisoned, and the woman would be sent back to the parents. So this sort of a extremely harsh law has been passed by the state of Uttarakhand. The government of India passed the triple talaq law, the law against triple talaq. Now, that is the only law in India which criminalizes a Muslim man for a civil offense. Marriage, divorce, these are all civil offenses. But here, a Muslim man, if he pronounces triple talaq against his wife, he is treated as a criminal, and the case goes to the court as a criminal case. So this is the first time this is happening. In a similar case, if a Hindu man abandons his wife, he is not treated as a criminal. That case is not a criminal case; it's a civil offense. So at the state, at the level of lawmaking, a discrimination has kept in like this here. The third level is the law enforcement agencies. Now, this is the police, which has a very discriminatory policy or discriminatory approach towards Muslim offenders and Hindu offenders. If it's a Muslim offender, even a suspect is picked up. If it's a Hindu offender, even a person, when you know for sure that this person has committed the crime, is not picked up. Cases registered, if there is a case of violence, and Hindus are involved in that violence, then the case is registered against unknown people. But in the case of the Muslims, everybody from the head of the family to children, everybody is immediately named, if not arrested. Their homes are demolished. So random justice is meted out in an instant. Worse than that is that they have a pool of Muslim boys. So whenever an incident or any incident which is regarded as a terrorist incident, they just go and pick up a few random Muslim boys from one of the Muslim ghettos. But in Delhi, it's Okla, Shaheen Bagh; in Bombay, Mumbai. So there are these fixed places. They'll just go pick up randomly some 4-5 boys and say these are the culprits. They're the perpetrators of this terrorist attack, and those guys are then locked up in the jail for a decade and a half, sometimes 2 decades, without even charge sheets being filed. And then finally, 20 or 21 years later, the court realizes that this person is innocent, and that person is discharged with honor, but having lost 2 decades of his life. So this is another thing which is happening in the Hindi belt. And the fourth fourth aspect of this experiment that I'm talking about is the vigilantism, is the level of the street, where vigilante groups, cow protection group, anti-love jihad group, anti-land jihad group, this group, that group, thousands of senas, this sena, that sena, this dal, that dal, they roam the streets looking for people who remotely look either like a Muslim or like a Christian, beat them up if they're lucky, or kill them if they're unfortunate. So this vigilantism is happening in this region, which has made the streets extremely unsafe for certain categories of people, largely poor people. So poor Muslims, poor Christians, they are extremely vulnerable when they step out of their homes because of this innumerous vigilante groups. So there are 4 ways in which this experiment of ensuring that the new terms of engagements are understood very well. So talking only about Muslims, so that the Muslims understand their place in the society. They understand that they have to defer to the majority sentiment all the time. They have to stay in their boundaries, stay in their areas, not venture out. So all of this is happening here. And whatever is happening here, this will not stay here. This will eventually be, as the Gujarat model, which was, it started with Gujarat, and then that model was transposed to the Hindi belt. And from Hindi belt, because it is being so successful here, that Gujarat is almost peaceful now, but the Hindi belt is always churning. There is always some incident which is reported from some part of this region, either from Madhya Pradesh or Rajasthan or UP, mostly UP, and I don't know, Bihar would be next. So this is the region where all of this happening. This new sort of society is being built, which will probably then be transposed to other parts of India. Why I say that is because the ruling party under the BJP, under whose benevolent gaze this is happening, or through whose designs this is happening, is a party on ascendance. A lot of people say that, it has won this election, but look at the margins. Their margins are so less. Their vote share is not more than 37%. Even at its peak in 2019, when it got so many seats, the vote share was only 37%. To that, my response is the Hindi belt comprises 42.2% of India's population. The majority of the states, as they are mentioned, where the BJP wins, apart from Gujarat and Maharashtra, is in the Hindi belt. It's Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh, now Bihar also. So their 37%, the majority of that 37%, maybe as high as 30%, comes from the Hindi belt. So that's a huge percentage. So this number, vote share percentage may go up, may go down. It's immaterial. But you see, of all the political parties in India since independence, BJP and before BJP, its forerunner BJS, Bharatiya Janata Sangh, has always grown. There are only two instances where the BJP votes fell. I mean, their party got lesser votes than what they got the previous year, were in 1980 and in 1984, when the party got two parliamentary seats. But if you take out these 2 years, and if you compare, I was looking at the Election Commission's website, and I just picked up this data. Year on year, 1957 onwards, the share of the BJS, Bharatiya Janata Sangh, and thereafter the BJP has consistently gone up. And the second largest party in India, now the second largest party in India, which still has pan-India presence, is the Congress party. Its seats have consistently come down. The only odd year was, 84 was an odd year when Rajiv Gandhi won a huge brute majority because of Indira Gandhi's assassination. The other oddity was 2009, when it got decent amount of seats. It got 206 seats. But apart from that, apart from these 2 years, since independence, Congress seats have consistently come down, and Janata Sangh and BJP seats have consistently gone up. In 2024, BJP got 240 seats against 303, which it got in 2019. But that's okay. The BJP number has gone down in relation to its previous number. It doesn't mean it has gone down in relation to any other party's number, or its vote share has gone down in relation to any other party's vote share. So I do not see BJP as a party and BJP's ideology, which is the RSS ideology, diminishing anytime soon in the future. Because the idea is to create a new India. The idea is to do the social re-engineering where not only in your public spaces, not only in your popular spaces, it becomes a Hindu nation. In any case, our public sphere is by and large Hindu. But even constitutionally, institutionally, it becomes Hindu. That is the objective, and that is what they are going to continuously work at. So, if the Hindi belt is facing these problems today, instead of dismissing them and saying that it's a backward region, so that is why it is happening, I think this we should regard this as a warning for the future and see how we can get over this situation, how we can arrest this situation where it is at the moment. I don't know if I've spoken too much or not, but I think I have finished. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was quite revealing. Let's hear more Zia Saab, and then after that we go for question answer. Zia Saab, your remaining 10, 12 minutes, whatever you want to do, and then
Yeah.
leave us for 20, 30 minutes for question answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ghazala, for the predictably wonderful session. When I was listening to you, I thought I was listening to your book. You seem to have memorized your book cover to cover. Not one sentence was out of place. And I can understand when you write, your writers must be very happy. You make their job much easier. Coming to today's subject, I have a couple of things to add. One of which is, as Ghazala says in the book, the Hindi heartland comprises largely 38% of the total area of the country and has about 40% population and gives more than 40% parliamentarians. All that makes it seem very important. But what I find particularly important and unsettling, as I also belong to the same Hindi heartland as Ghazala, my family roots go back to Rampur, though I'm from Delhi, and hers probably go back to Agra. Hindi heartland is a much brutalized land, infested with violence, grave violence, massacre. If you go back in time, we have the first invasion, which was the Aryan invasion, and then we have the Greek invasion, and so on and so forth, right onto Mahmud of Ghazni. Before that, Muhammad bin Qasim, Mahmud Ghazni, then the Mongol invasions. Everybody seemed to be coming to India through their Hindi heartland via the northwest frontier. This kind of violence has obviously affected the psyche of people of the region. So much so that today, when you look at the population of this region of the country, I think probably all of us, or at least most of us, are immigrants here. All that matters is how far back do you go in time? Do you put the lid on 1947? There's so many people migrated to the newly created state of Pakistan, and so many people came to India from Peshawar, Lahore, etc. Or do you go back to 1206 when the Delhi Sultanate was founded by Qutbuddin Aibak? Or do you go back further in time to 1500 BC when the Aryans came to India for the first time? But at the end of the day, this heartland is the land of refugees, is the land of immigrants, and somewhere down the line, at an unconscious level or subconscious level, it has affected the mindset, the thinking, the actions of the population of this particular region. Unfortunately, we often tend to think of the Hindi heartland only from the point of view of massacres. We take great pride in telling people that Delhi has been ruined 9 times and has come up 9 times, blah, blah, blah. We tend to talk of New Delhi, and before that, uh, Old Delhi as in Shah Jahanabad, and before that, Jahapana, and so on. But what we tend to forget when we are focusing too much on violence and massacre, Hindi heartland is also surprisingly the land of great accomplishments. It gave India an easily the earliest direct democracy with the founding of 16 Mahajanpadas in around 600 BC. This is something for which we have not been given enough credit for by historians of India and across the world. After that, Hindi heartland is the region which gave us Mahavira with his birth in 599 BC in Vaishali, modern day Bihar. Hindi heartland is also the region where Gautam Buddha was born. It's also the place which has Ajmer Sharif, where we also have the Kumbh Mela. Equally importantly, as Ghazala pointed out, we have Deoband. Now, so much for such accomplishments and such luminaries, founders of religions and everything. Deoband was formed in 1866, soon after 1857's First War of Independence. After the First War of 1857, which started from Meerut on 10th May in 1857, Muslims were held up as the villains of the peace by the British. They came down heavily, and hundreds of Muslim scholars, notably imams and maulanas, were hung to death by the British. Many were executed. The idea was to send a shrill down the spine of the community that you dare not raise your voice against the government today. At a much lesser level, in the same Hindi heartland, we are seeing what is happening to a couple of Muslim men, or at least technically Muslim men, accused of raising protests against the CAA only because they happen to belong to a certain community. The idea again is to make a model out of them, example out of them for rest of the community so that nobody raises his voice. Coming back to Deoband in 1866, Deoband was founded to give moral custodians to the community, which was obviously intimidated, scared, and victim of violence after 1847. And it all started very fine. From 1857 onwards, 1866 onwards, the community gradually got back its moral fiber, and maybe in many ways it got back its spine as well, because soon in the early 20th century, we see Deoband also hosting Jamiyat Ulema Hind, which played an important role in our freedom struggle, particularly with the Silk Letter conspiracy, and then how Jamiyat Ulema Hind defied the Muslim League and stood for a unified India as against Muslim Pakistan and Hindu India, which was the idea of the Muslim League and the Jansan. The Jamiatul Mahind stood for a unified country where everybody will have equal rights, freedom of speech, and so on and so forth. But when something similar was obviously incorporated in our constitution, which came into force a couple of years after our independence, but when our constitution founding members gave the right to equality and the freedom to practice and propagate any religion, and the state was barred from discriminating on the basis of religion, we don't give enough credit to Mughal Emperor Akbar. The 16th century Mughal Emperor was way ahead of times. In 1575, he founded Ibadat Khana in Agra, from where our friend Ghazala comes, where he encouraged debates between priests and scholars of various religions. There will be Brahmin priests over there, there will be Jesuits, there will be Sikhs, there will be Muslims, Jains, and so on and so forth. It was particularly remarkable that it happened in Agra in 1575, when in the rest of the world, people were identified with the religion of the emperor, with the religion of the ruler. Here was an enlightened ruler who didn't force anybody to convert. As Ghazala rightly pointed out in her talk, there was nothing called coercive conversion, barring stray incidents here or there. But Akbar founded an empire through Ibadat Khana where you spoke to people of other religions, you talked to each other rather than talking at each other. Something like that may not be possible in contemporary India, but there is much to learn from the much maligned Mughals. We had Shah Jahan, who banned cow slaughter for a certain number of days of the year. He even stopped animal trade, also to say meat business, for 12 days in a year to coincide with the sacred days of Jain religion out of respect for them. Akbar indirectly stopped the practice of circumcision of Muslim men after Jahangir's case. We do not give enough credit to some of the remarkable incidents of the Hindi heartland when we reduce it to a theater of violence and massacre. Coming back to Deoband, I have one strong objection to Deoband, which unfortunately Ghazala has also not highlighted. I believe she would agree with me there. Deoband did much to restore self confidence and a sense of religion and belonging among Muslim men. But what about Muslim women? Were men always supposed to carry knowledge to women? They were never provided an avenue and opportunity to gain knowledge firsthand. From 1866 to 2026, Deoband has not produced a single woman who is a Quran Hafiz, a single woman who is a Qazi, who can decide on matters of Islamic jurisprudence. When you reduce Islam or any religion to a monopoly of men, you are not only doing you are not only being disrespectful to your religion, you are also making sure that the voice of 50% of the society is crushed. And when 50% of the part of the society is not engaged in decision making, you can understand how the decisions will be made. The decisions will be made by men for women, which is not what Islam teaches us. In Islam, when a woman prays, she gets the same reward as a man does. When a woman observes fast, she gets the same reward as a man. When she goes for Hajj, is the same for men and women, the reward. Even when you pay zakat, the woman is supposed to pay for her earnings as the man is supposed to pay for his earnings. This is something which we need to highlight and which is all, again coming back to the heartland thing, this discrimination against women, which manifests at times in violence against them. I think North India in particular is the scariest part of the country for young women out on the roads at night. We have the much discussed case of Damini in 2013, the girl who was gang raped in Delhi, and which was followed by a lot of candle marches and everything. What people tend to forget, 4 days after Damini's incident in Delhi, an 80-year-old woman was gang raped at her home in Shadra. So, any man who tells you next time that the woman provoked it with her dress, with her attire, tell him to look at this 80-year-old woman's case in the Hindi heartland, in India's heartland in Delhi. Similarly, this heartland is also the scene of the much violence against Muslim men. Ghazala talked of lynching, but the lynching cases also began from this very heartland. Dadri, in September 2015, when Akhlaq was lynched in Western UP on the mere allegation that he had killed a calf. The man was dragged from his bedroom to the town square and killed. Nobody came to his rescue. So much for the peace loving region of Gautam Buddha, Ajmer Sharif, Ayodhya, and Deoband. We have much to learn from history, but we also have much to make sure that we do not repeat the mistakes of our ancestors, our forefathers. Thank you, Ghazala, for doing this book. It has come not a day too soon, and I hope all of us who are here today and all of us who go back home and talk about it, pick up a copy of this book and enlighten ourselves about what makes the Hindi heartland tick despite all its ironies, all its anomalies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zia Saab. Thank you, both speakers. And before we go to question answer, we have coming Saturday's announcement. Ghostly presence of Urdu in Indian cultural space is fair. And the speaker is Dr. Rashid Ali from Central University of Jammu, from the Department of Mass Communication News Media. And he's going to talk on this subject. He will be formally introduced by Dr. Tanveer Ejaz from Delhi University, and concluding remarks will be given by a very well-known personality from Delhi, Dr. M. Said Alam, a renowned playwright and director. So after that, over to Dr. Rafat Hussain for moderating the question and answer session. Rafat?
Thank you, Rajbhai. So the question and answer session opens now. And as you know, there are two options. You can ask in the chat box, put a question or comment in the chat box, or you can raise your digital hand. So I see two hands raised, and let's begin with Hassan Saab. Please unmute yourself. Please.
Can you?
Yeah, we hear you.
You can hear me. I was trying to switch on the video, which I can't.
Yeah, you can switch on the video now. You can do that. Oh, okay. You can.
No, I can't, but it's probably better that you don't see my ugly mug, so I will ask.
Hassan Saab, we would like to see.
So, no, but I can't.
You can now. You can now if you want to. You can.
All right. So, yeah, it's better to put a face to a name. When justice dies, all else does. The judiciary is the last rampart that protects civil society and indeed our constitution. Now we all know, and it's no secret, as to what are the current standards of justice in India today. The question I have is, what are the recourses available to civil society to challenge the injustices of the judiciary? Because I think this is the place where we must really highlight what's going on in the judiciary, because if justice is not delivered by our courts, then I do not think there is any hope left for getting justice from the political system or the bureaucracy or any other avenue. So what are your thoughts on that, Ghazala?
I think there is very little that one can do except protest, and the space for protest is progressively shrinking in India. So I also am not very sure if it's such a great idea for Muslims to lead protests on their own, because the moment that happens, the focus of the protest then goes away from the issue on which the protest is being mounted, and it comes down to a Muslim issue. It becomes a Muslim issue. Just as the CAA and RC protests, when they started, they were spearheaded by Muslim women across India, mostly in Delhi, but all the parts of India too. And there were so many other people who joined those protests. It was not purely a Muslim protest, though Muslims were in the forefront. But the brunt of that protest, the government, as we say, danda, fell on the Muslims. So the blame fell only on the Muslims for not only leading the protests, but also violence which followed that. So I think the space for protest is getting really small now. So one has to be very careful about what one protests against and how you mount a protest. So unless it's a protest where you can get large number of people on your side, I don't think even that avenue is available any longer. So then the only way available is to speak through the media, maybe not the mainstream media, because again, that space is very limited now since 2014. So maybe through social media, maybe through media, the private independent media which operates in digital space, maybe you can register your protest through that. But honestly speaking, I'm just repeating myself. I really don't know what are the avenues available to fight injustice in India today. Our civil society is extremely divided, and the whole idea also of what we used to once upon a time called the liberals of the society, even they are divided in what they think is worthy of protest and what they think is not worthy of protest. The biggest bane here is the totem of nationalism which has been thrust upon everybody. So in everything that you do, even a mere criticism of the government is now tested on the touchstone of nationalism. Whatever you say, if you are criticizing the government, if you're criticizing the ruling party or the prime minister, it immediately brings into question your patriotism, your love for your nation. So this whole space is not, it's not as free and as safe as it used to be.
Thank you so much. The next is Ambassador Ishrat Aziza.
Thank you. Thank you, Ghazala. I listened to you with great attention, very informative. I might also mention that I'm in the midst of reading your book, Being a Muslim, and which again is a very thought-provoking book. I had two questions, very brief ones. You mentioned that the Muslims started institution like Deoband to kind of protect their identity, as it were. And that most Hindus reacted. Could you give some dates to buttress this point, to establish this point very clearly? That's one question. The other question is, what idea or vision can we have to overcome this extremely divisive identity politics, which is there not only in India, but in many other places around the world? I mean, what Americans say, the nuclear option against this extremely divisive thinking.
See, it is not correct to say that I have used the example of Arya Samaj, but it is not correct to say that Arya Samaj came in response to Darul Uloom in Deoband. As far as dates are concerned, Arya Samaj started in 1875, and Darul Uloom, as far as I remember, though Zia has given a different date, but the date that I was aware of was of 1859. But Zia has given the date of 1866. So I'll have to look, and since you're reading Born a Muslim, I have mentioned the date of its founding in that book. I'll have to pick up my book, get up and pick up my book to get the date from there. So as far as dates are concerned. Now, the thing is that I do not regard the Arya Samaj as a reactionary movement to Darul Uloom Deoband. They happened very close to one another. They both came into being, and the focus of both was to create a very distinctive religious identity, and not just a physical identity, but a theological identity. So Arya Samaj focused on a very monotheistic type of Hinduism as against the pluralism of Hinduism, which believes in multiple gods and multiple deities. Even as small as in a village, people have gram devtas, so they have more reverence, more devotion to their gram devta, their village deity, as opposed to the bigger deity, maybe like Lord Ram or Lord Shiva. So that is the plural nature of Hinduism. So Arya Samaj tried to create a new form of Hinduism, which was very different from that. That is what I was saying. So I don't think it was in reaction to Darul Uloom. Darul Uloom, as I have written in great detail, there's a full chapter on it in the book that you're reading, Born a Muslim. So you'll get to, you'll find out what its objectives were. Coming to your second question, is what is the option? I think the only option available today for people who really care is to constantly speak about it, record it. I'm a great supporter of history recording. And I don't think only historians, it's only a historian's job to record history. I'm not a historian, but what I have done through my book, The Hindi Heartland, and before that, Born a Muslim, it's a record of our contemporary times. Hindi Heartland is not just a chronicle of this region, it is also a record of this region through its history and its contemporary times. Post-independence, how our society emerged, it's a record of that. How the divisiveness of us in our society, how the post-partition violence in our society shaped our thinking, shaped our perception about ourselves and about others. So it's a record of all that. So I think this record keeping is very important, because who knows when this part of history will be rewritten or recasted in a different format. So I think if we save our memories, if we save what we are observing today for posterity, that would be a huge resource for them to pick from, and to ensure that we do not believe what we are told to believe, but we believe what actually we have seen happen. So I think that is the only way in which we can fight this onslaught on our society.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Zia Saab, do you want to add anything, or we are good?
I guess we are good. Whatever Ghazala said, I tend to agree with it. All that I would like to say from my side is, you don't have to see Arya Samaj as a reaction to Deoband, and I agree with that there, because around the time Arya Samaj was founded in 1875, this was also the period when Gaur Rakshani Sabhas began to be founded, first in Punjab and then in various parts of Awadh, first and foremost. And gradually it gave rise to not just the cow protection movement, but the first instances of violence around the possible cow slaughter, what we are witnessing at a much greater level today. It goes back to the 1880s, 1890s. Similarly, from this Arya Samaj work and Gaurakshni Sabhas, there came about Ghar Vapsi in the early 20th century. And in response to Ghar Vapsi, wherein Muslims were converted to Hinduism with the allegation that they were initially Hindus who had strayed from the right path, Tablighi Jamaat was founded in 1926-27 to basically educate those Muslims who did not know much about religion, who did not know anything about Islam beyond the Kalma. So Maulana Ilyas got down to bringing them to the masjid, making them understand what is a prayer all about, making them learn the specific verses for everyday namaz, and then incorporating them into the larger Muslim society. So you can say that Tablighi Jamaat was founded in reaction to the Shuddhi movement, which in turn was a spill-off of the Gorakshni Sabhas and the Arya Samaj's founding in 1875.
Thank you so much. Let's move on. Rashid Ali Saab.
Uh, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
It was an interesting insight. I really enjoyed it, and it was a wonderful lecture by you, Ghazala Sahiba. Just to have a little uh, uh, deviation from the point of view that you have presented. This deviation is basically in the form of the title itself. Like, should we call it it a Hindi belt? Because I also belong to the same place. I mean, like, the same regional identity, what you call Hindi belt. Because to my understanding, calling it a Hindi belt would be a disservice to the multiplicity and diversity of the region itself. First of all, this is basically done by the state, perpetrated by the state itself, which has devised a mechanism that churns a certain kind of homogeneity, and then it starts giving a nomenclature to certain things. So Hindi belt, to my understanding, is very statist in this sense. The second is that what you call Hindi belt basically is an admixture of different other languages and primarily Urdu language. So by calling it Hindi hinterland or Hindi belt, it would be, to my understanding, undermining Urdu language that way. The second thing that I would like to talk about, the other diversity, which is of the caste, which you have completely bracketed off in your entire deliberation. Arya Samaj movement, when it started to sprout, at the same time, Satya Shodhak Samaj, that was coming in Maharashtra, though that's not part of this constructed Hindi hinterland. But at the same time, the same thing was happening elsewhere, which was putting up a huge resistance to this modality of Arya Samaj.
Okay, so I from your observations, I think I have detected two questions. One is that I have broad brushed the caste completely in my talk. The reason is that the subject of my talk was importance of the Hindi belt. So I was talking of the importance of this region for the rest of the country. So this entire talk was geared towards making that argument. As far as the caste is concerned, there is a full chapter on the caste system, and Zia also mentioned it in his introduction that I have dwelt on caste in my book. So my book is right here, and maybe I can plug it and say, please buy the book and read it. There is a full section on caste, not only caste, differences in the society in the Hindi belt. I'm using the Hindi belt. I'll come to that point in a while. But also how the caste politics has played up differently in states of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, UP, and Bihar. And that is a factor of their economic power that various castes have. So Dalits in UP and Bihar, their status is very different from their status in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, because Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan were princely states. So the social hierarchies were very fixed in these states and well understood by all classes of the society. So Dalits also accepted and understood their place in the social hierarchy in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Whereas in UP and Bihar, because they were British, part of British India, the freedom movement, the mobilization of the people, the Gandhi's Satyagraha started from Bihar, as you know, from Champaran. So the mobilization of the weakest communities, including the Dalits, happened in these two states. They were the foot soldiers in the freedom movement. So their political aspirations and their consciousness of their political power was much higher, which is why post-independence, the worst caste mass violence have happened in Bihar. Large-scale massacres have happened in Bihar. The massacres they took place because there was resistance by the Dalits. So the Dalits also consolidated themselves and massacred the upper caste. So upper caste created their various armies, Ranveer Sena being one of them, Sunlight Army being another of them, carried out violence against Dalits. Organizations like Communist Party of India, Maoist, Leninists entered Bihar, mobilized the Dalits, formed the various dalams with them, the most famous of them being the CPML. So that sort of violence you did not see in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. I have dealt with all of that in great detail in the book. UP has been a very different state because UP immediately after independence saw land reforms. So a lot of communities got land as part of the land reforms. So there are pockets in UP where even Dalits, especially the Jatavs among the Dalits, they are also landholders and they draw their power from the land they hold. So they are in a politically powerful position. So in UP, you do not see the caste, or you did not see the caste massacres the way they happened in Bihar. So I have dealt with the dynamics of caste in all the 6 states of the Hindi belt. Uttarakhand, in any case, is an oddity because the majority there is upper caste Hindus, primarily because of the Hindu pilgrimage places. So the rulers, the Rajputs who ruled there, and subsequently the Muslim rulers there, they invited Brahmins from all over India to come, gave them land parcels to stay there, live there, to conduct prayers and all that, because it being the holy land. So the population of Brahmins is substantively higher in Uttarakhand. So once again, the caste equation is very different there as opposed to the rest of the Hindi belt. Now, coming to the first observation, that why are we calling it Hindi belt? Because it's also the land of Urdu. You're absolutely correct in that. This is not the term that I have coined. This region is called a Hindi belt or Hindi patti in Hindi. So I cannot argue against that. I mean, I have in my book, I have said that this Hindi, the language, is the least unifying aspect of this region. It's a hugely diverse region. Linguistically, it is more diverse than any other part of India. So I am not saying that it is Hindi. It should be called a Hindi belt or a Hindi heartland, but that is the nomenclature which the government of India has given it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Ghazala, the land of Ghalib Mir Premchand should not be called a Hindi belt.
Yes, it should be called land of Ghalib and Premchand.
Thank you so much. And
I don't know why with Ghalib and Mir you used Premchand and not used Surdas, and you did not use Tulsidas.
You can also
I'll
use Manto later.
I'll just
Oh, Manto was a
I'll
Kashmiri.
just
okay, let's
I'll just
move
also
on to the next question. This is from Rana Khan, and this is in reference to a question you made a point during the question and answer. So, what Muslims can do to face the challenges? Given the limitation of a Muslim protest, why is the community so hesitant about making allies, for instance, with Dalit, towards a common cause? The typical old question.
This is actually, this experiment was tried several times.
Yeah.
If you know, when this party was created, Muslim, I'm forgetting the name of the party now. So they had invited the Dalits to join hands with that party.
Muslim
what was it
Majlis.
called?
Muslim
Muslim Majlis. So the Dalits had come, but they wanted their own party because they wanted to be the leaders. They did not want Muslims to be the leaders. Now, the problem between Dalit and Muslim cooperation is very simple. The problem is of reservation. reservation pool is limited. Muslim says there are Dalits among Muslims also, so Muslims should be recognized, Dalit Muslims should also be recognized as Dalits, and which is why the Pasmanda movement has a slogan, Dalit Musalman Ek Saman, Dalit ho ya Musalman, Pichra Ek Saman. I'm forgetting the slogan. It's Pichra Ek Saman, Muslim ho ya. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the slogan.
Whatever, but we get the gist.
Anyway, so basically they're saying that the Dalits among Muslims or the scheduled caste among Muslims should be recognized constitutionally as a scheduled caste, and they should get the benefit of reservation. Dalits are not hesitant, they resist this because obviously there's only that much of reservation available, that many jobs available. They do not want to share this corpus. The other thing is that the Dalit movement, the Ambedkarites, they are to a very large extent atheists. They have shunned the Hindu religion, they have shunned the Sanatan religion because they call themselves Ambedkarite. So they resent the fact that the Muslim Dalits or Pasmanda Muslims who want the benefits of reservation, who want to be associated with the Dalit movement, they do not shun their religion. They still hold on to their religion. So they say, if we can fight against our religious heads and if we can turn our back on our religion, why can't you do the same? So there has been a lot of disagreement between the two groups. But the final and the most important factor is that since 1925, when RSS came into existence, it has made a huge inroads amongst the Dalit communities. It has tried to get Dalits to accept Hinduism. I mean, they are Hindus, all right, but accept Hinduism as a way of life. So there is increasing Hinduization of the Dalit communities, especially in states of UP. And I have personally witnessed this. A large number of Dalits have become even more Hindu than the upper caste Hindus. So a lot of them have turned vegetarian. A lot of them do more puja part than maybe even a Pandit would do. They observe more festivals. They are the foot soldiers of the BJP's various, not BJP, but RSS's various cohorts, like this Sena, that Sena. They are the foot soldiers. They are the ones who lead these various yatras, whether it's Hanuman Yatra or Ram Navami Yatra. So these are the people in the forefront. They are the foot soldiers when some atrocities have been meted out to the tribal population of the Hindi belt. So the point is that Dalits also now, large number of them find their respect coming from the Hindu community if they are more Hindu, if they are more militantly Hindus. So the cooperation with Muslims is no longer now, the option is no longer available.
Thank you, Ghazala Sahiba. There are 3 more questions and we are left with only a couple of minutes. So please be brief. Dr. Nazir Ahmad, please.
Gee, a very insightful and penetrating discourse, both on the part of Professor Ghazala and Professor Zia. 2 quick questions. One related to the trajectory of the Hindi language in the last 150 years as to how and why it became communal. I remember it was in the early 1950s. I'm from Karnataka. And at the time, we were first studying Urdu. That was our mother tongue. And English, we were required to do that, Kannada. And then we were made to study Hindi. And it occurred to me that Hindi as a language itself was communal. It was not just what they were saying, but the language itself had become communal. And I carried that question with me for a long time. Some of the things that you pointed out very aptly, for instance, the British were there, the economic conditions were the same in North India and South India, partition was there, and yet the same kind of communalism did not happen in the South Indian languages as happened in Hindi. That's the first question as to why it happened. The second one related to the trajectory of Muslims in India. It is obvious to me that we can do all the protests we want. We can talk about the Arya Samaj and Deoband and this movement and that movement, and we have done whatever we have done with respect to the Babri Masjid and so on. But one thing we have not done is to look back at, we talk about Akbar. Akbar's culture was a Sufi culture. And yet Islam in India in the last 100 years has moved away from our traditional roots towards a Salafi one. Your comment, please.
I haven't understood the first part that Hindi is a communal language. I mean, I'd like an example to understand what you mean by saying Hindi is a communal language.
Well, for instance, we were made to study two books. The one was about the Prophet ﷺ. And even when we study Prophet
in Hindi?
In Hindi.
Okay.
And the comments that we heard from our teachers and so on, they used to laugh at, this is Hindi, used to laugh at the fact that Prophet ﷺ married Hazrat Khadija when she was 40 and the Prophet ﷺ was 25, etc. The entire approach, the language itself, the vocabulary itself, even to this day I wonder about it.
No, I think that was some... yes, please.
This division of language on the basis of religion, as Ghazala also said, was obviously the ploy of the British to divide Indians for their well-known divide and rule policy. And as a result, we had this sad case at various railway stations where we would have words written in Hindi, Hindu Pani. And at another place, at another tank, the words would be written as Muslim Pani in Urdu. And this division actually became more concrete with the founding of Pakistan and the unfortunate, you can say, proprietary rights over Urdu by the new Pakistan government that became the state language over there, despite the fact that no state in Pakistan has Urdu as its principal language. As a consequence, Muslims of India came to be associated with Urdu, though it is absolutely erroneous. I remember back in the late 60s when I saw the advertisements in the 70s, 80s, there was a Hindi film, Jahan Sati Wahan Bhagwan, and the advertisement was in Urdu. In my childhood, in 1975, there was a film called Jai Santoshima. The posters used to have the name of the film in Urdu, even in a place like Delhi. So Hindi and Urdu did not necessarily have a religion of their own. No language has a religion, but the politicians use them for their ulterior ends.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much. N.K. Lalsa, please.
Sir, do I have some time or only 1 or 2
Yeah,
minutes?
but we are left with very few minutes, so go ahead, Niranjan. Don't give a speech. I know. Go ahead, please.
I have 2-3 questions. It is said that one is responsible for one's own situation. So whether Muslim community is responsible for their present situation, though I agree that Indian state, not Indian state, but present government practices discrimination against them, not only them, against any rightful person, any person who is for right things. The second question is, as Ghazala said, that the government is discriminating against Muslim youth by making triple talaq a criminal act. If a Hindu man divorces his wife, he doesn't commits a crime. But when a Muslim man divorces his wife, he becomes a
Neeraj Saab,
we lost you, Neeraj Saab.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, we lost you, Neeraj.
even Quran does not recognize triple talaq. It says talaq is to be given in 3 months, 3 menstrual cycle has to be crossed, because a pregnant woman cannot be divorced. So suppose triple talaq is uttered at one point of time and that woman is pregnant, then it goes against the tenets of the...
Can I just answer the first two questions and Zak can say, and then maybe if we have time, we can take
Yes,
on the
yes,
rest,
please,
the remaining
please.
of them.
Yes.
The first part, that the first question is that everybody or all people are responsible for their state. I do not agree with that at all, for the simple reason that in any country, any nation state, the status of the civilians or the society is determined determined by the powerful amongst them. And in a country, a multi-cultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic country like India, it's always the majority, irrespective of the government, irrespective of the constitution. It's always the majority which determines the course of the nation. So, as I said, our constitution laid down certain fundamental rights and gave right to equality of practice of religion and everything to everybody. But our public sphere increasingly, since 1947 onwards, became Hindu. A good example of this is that even today, the Hindu sentiments have to be deferred to when the festivals come. So Navratri, the meat shops have to be shut. During other festivals, other things have to be done. During Kavod Yatra, the people, the vendors on the route of the yatra, the Muslims have to be removed from there. All of this is happening. But I have not come across a single incident where the majority community or Hindu community have been told to defer to the Muslim sentiments. That okay, the Muslim festival or Ramadan is coming.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
But when
so let me just finish.
terrorist act takes
Let me
place.
finish. Let me finish.
Neeraj Saab, time
Let me
constraint
finish.
hai, let her finish and then we
Let,
end up. Okay?
let me finish.
Yeah.
So the month of Ramadan is there, so you do not do certain things. That kind of law or that kind of order is never passed. So that is one part. It's a very good thing that you mentioned terrorist act and terrorism. Actually, this is my favorite subject. And I had proposed to Mr. Raziuddin earlier when we were talking that this is one subject I wanted to talk about, but subsequently I changed my mind. Now, look, there is no such thing as terrorism, and India has no threat of terrorism at all. What we call terrorism are unresolved political issues, which, when you brush those issues under the carpet, or when you try and recast those issues under some pretext or the other, that is when a violence backlash happens. Now, the problem in India is that we are following the Western template, because the US has decided that terrorism is the biggest threat after 9/11. So we also followed suit, and we have been since then saying that we are the victims of terrorism. We are the biggest victims of terrorism. When the fact is, you look around yourself, our terrorism stems from, most of our terrorism, especially on Indian mainland, stemmed from Pakistan, because there were outstanding issues with Pakistan. Whenever we were talking with Pakistan, whenever we had a conversation going on, these issues, the incidents of violence came down substantially. When we were talking to Pakistan on the issue of Kashmir between 2004 and 2009, Kashmir was at its most peaceful, despite Article 370 and 335A being in place there. There were huge number of tourists going there, because we were talking about the roadmap towards a common, mutually beneficial, mutually supportive future with each other. So the point is, the terrorist incidents that you talk about, which the US or Israel has deemed as terrorism, are again political incidents of political violence, incidents of resistance by people whose lives you have disrupted. So I do not agree with this, that when a terrorist incident happens, how does a state react?
My question is different.
Thank you both.
My question is
And
different.
I would.
My point is, has the Muslims
Neeraj
condemned
Saab.
any terrorism act? Because
But I-
whenever there
Can I
is
come
an
in,
act of
Ghazala, and say
terrorism,
something
No.
here?
Yeah.
There are a couple of things to add to what Ghazala was saying. She was giving the example of Navratra. I stay in UP, and she's also in UP. Last year, there was a complete ban on the sale of meat for 59 days for the month of Shravan and 18 days of Navratra combined together. So for 77 days, Muslims were not allowed to sell meat. Largely, they are Muslim shopkeepers only. So that is first thing. That is not something.
one
That
thing,
there is not
Okay,
something
so
the
this,
community.
sir,
okay,
one thing,
all
even
three, please,
Hindus
all
were
three.
not allowed to eat meat for those many days. So you don't
Let me
see this
complete this.
aspect.
Razi
I
bhai,
said most of the
Even
shopkeepers
Hindus get
are Muslims
affected.
only, and there
One second.
what we
One
Razi
need to
bhai,
second.
do,
back
we
to
don't
Zaz-
need.
you. We are
Zazab,
not talking
Zazab.
about all those issues anymore.
Yeah,
We
Zazab.
are
Very
only
briefly,
6
One
we
minutes
second.
need
One
to
above.
second.
learn from what Shah Jahan used to do during the Mughal Empire.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
12 days in a year, he did not allow the purchase or selling of any meat out of respect for the Jain sentiments.
Let me.
If we extend
Okay,
something similar today
that's
to all communities, that would be better.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
gentleman Nirsa was asking about triple talaq. The Quran does not refer to instant triple talaq, as you rightly said, but the Quran also talks of a process of reconciliation after the first
Yes,
divorce and the second divorce. What
yes,
what criminalization of talaq has done, it has taken away from a Muslim couple the option of reconciliation. Which man would like to reconcile with a wife who has sent him to jail? And
Thank
vice
you very
versa.
much. Thank you,
okay.
Azia
Why
Saab.
we
Thank
are
you.
talking all those things? We know,
Okay.
all of us know
One
already.
second. Let me plead to Neeraj Saab. Neeraj Saab, without fail, you come in the last minute and you really put 3, 4, 5 questions, and then you also get very hurt. Then everybody has to listen, and you have a typical one kind of response where you put the uh, put on the victim, you put the thing that it is your responsibility and there is nothing wrong. That is not a fair judgment. And you keep on interfering also. You raise one question, you have seen in the audience, people have raised one question, maximum two. You keep on, cross questioning. And then we get into a bad scenario.
Okay, Razi bhai, conclude it,
Yeah.
finalize it.
So this is not